All right, last thing with the shooting. Notice in our shooting, you can shoot really, really quickly, and the bullets are kind of close together, or kind of can be close together. Well, we need to actually limit our fire rate, or our rate of fire. And you'll see this going on in a lot of games, like Call of Duty and such, that actually have automatic weapons and things like that. And in our case, we're going to kind of use the same concept. So we're going to go over to the gunship script, because that's where we call this instantiate. And we're going to add a couple variables. The first one is a public float, and I'm going to call it the fire rate. And I'm going to set it equal to 0.25f is a good number. And then I'm also going to say a private float next fire. And I'm going to say 0.0f. And so basically this fire rate is going to be our public variable that we can see into Unity, and we can adjust to how fast we want to shoot. And this is going to be shooting about every quarter of a second. That's the fastest you can shoot. And this next fire is basically just going to track when's the next time we can fire. And that's why it is private. We don't really need to see the game developers or designers. We don't need to have them see it, because we don't need it to be modified. We're going to modify internally in this script. So this is why, like again I said, we have our own void fire method, so that I can have all this extra intricate code in here. So what I'm going to use is time.time, and I'm going to say if time.time is greater than whatever my next fire rate is. And I'm going to add some curly braces here. I'm going to tab this in, add a closing curly brace. And basically what this means is time.time is basically the time since the start of the level. So time.time is constantly counting up. And what we're going to do with next fire is we're basically going to set it to whatever the current time in seconds from the start of the level, but then we're going to add fire rate to it every time. So then once time becomes greater than 0.25 seconds from the last time we fired, we're going to be able to fire again. But after we fire, so we need to set next fire equal to the current time in seconds that has passed plus fire rate. So if I play the game and after 10 seconds, next fire becomes 10 plus 0.25. And so time.time is always counting up, like I said, from the start of the level. And what's going to happen is that happens kind of in the update automatically in the background, is every time I hit this fire key, it's going to come into here, into this fire command, and it's going to say, well, is the time 10.2 larger than whatever next fire is? And if next fire was 10.25, then there has to have a quarter of a second passed before I can fire again. And this is basically all it takes to limit a fire rate. So for a machine gun or anything in like a first-person shooter type game, you would just be modifying this variable over and over again. And as you know, there's been a lot of scandal about that when developers start to modify like fire rates of guns because they're too powerful for some, and so on. So if I click play here, my fire rate is 0.25. I can hit the space bar as fast as I want. But look, the spawn rate is going to stay the same. The bullets are about evenly spaced out. And that's what I want, and that's what that fire rate does for us. So now we have the player working. We'll next move on to the enemy